excited. We are going to be talking about two of my favorite subjects today. The one is power of the mind and living outside of your comfort zone. So as you said, we have Ryan Stramrood in studio who has mastered this art of pushing himself constantly out of his comfort zone. Ryan is an ultra extreme open water and ice swimmer, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and a world record holder. Ryan has already completed 100 Robben Island to mainland crossings, swam solo across the English Channel to France, swam the first official ice mile in the Antarctica, completed the world's first swim around the southernmost tip of South America, Cape Horn, and was the first South African male to swim from Europe to Africa across the Gibraltar Strait and swim in minus 33 degrees Celsius in Siberia. And he did this all in a speedo.
Is there anything you can't do?
Yeah, there's lots I can't do.
Good grief.
So welcome, Ryan. Thank you
Thank you so much.
for being in studio today. So Ryan, tell us how you became an ultra extreme open water and ice swimmer. What was your motivation behind it?
Well, firstly, that's a very flattering intro. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
One doesn't wake up one day and decide I want to be an ultra extreme open water and ice swimmer. I mean, it's just horrific. It's been a long journey and quite an amazing one that literally took me from the couch, becoming a couch potato, loving the remote control, watching lots of TV, eating chips.
As most men do.
As many men do, yeah. Not in my world so much anymore, I don't allow it. But I realized about, 19 years ago that I needed to do something. And I'd always enjoyed swimming. And I took a client away on a business trip and he said, well, why don't you join this little swimming squad? And I remember thinking, oh, all right, let's try it. And I managed 20 lengths in a swimming pool, which is half a kilometer, and nearly needed to vomit because I was so unfit and terrible. But I stuck to it and went back the next day. And eventually, there are guys who have been at the squad for a while. A gentleman called Tony Salmayer, who's an old swimming legend, said, why don't you set your sights on doing a Robben Island swimming crossing?
Wow.
And I remember thinking, what's he smoking there? That's for proper athletes and the superhumans out there. That water is freezing cold and it's a very, very long way. Long story short, I decided to set the goal, and I read lots of stories about people who have done Robben Island crossings and did some research and thought, well, maybe even when I get halfway across, you know what, it'll be an experience. And set the sights and completed my first Robben Island crossing, which I consider my first milestone in the swimming world. And it started a journey, a very, very initial part of a journey in my mind that just said, but you know what, Ryan, a few months ago, you honestly believe this was reserved for people better than you.
Yes.
For people who do this kind of thing, not you. And here you have just swum for 2 hours and 23 minutes in a speedo in icy water from the island to the beach, and you walked out and you're alive, and it was hard, as you expected it to be. But what else can you achieve?
Wow.
And so the journey started.
Fantastic. So now you've done 100 of those.
I've done 100 of those, and I'm sure your next question is why would you do 100? But most people set Robben Island as a challenge, and a lot of open water swimmers set that as the Everest of their open water swimming careers. Because I have gone on to understand the cold and have done bigger and better and much, much tougher swims, and I live in Cape Town, one of the most perfect training grounds just happens to be that little stretch of water between Robben Island and Blouberg Beach. 7.3 kilometers is the shortest route as the crow flies. The water is generally between 12 and 14 degrees Celsius.
So it's cold, but it's not freezing.
Yeah. Look, you get in a speedo in 12 degrees and tell me it's not freezing. But you know what? You've got some. We'll get into it later. But you've got a little bit of time if you keep moving and you've trained your mind. You can prolong your time in those temperatures for quite extensively. And yeah, it became a perfect training ground because you've got the cold water, you've got the currents, you've got the distance, you've got the wind and the waves, you've got the sea life below you, you've got the things that sting you. You've got all the psychological elements as well. So I started doing more and more Robben Islands, partly because I really enjoy the swim, and partly because it's a brilliant training ground. And in summer, when the sun comes up early, quite often I'll find myself at the island at 6 a.m. jumping in the water. I'm on the beach by 8 a.m. and I'm in the office by 9.
Wow.
You know, and
So
do
2
a full day's
hours.
work. It's I average 2 hours for me,
Wow.
but it's, you know, it goes from my best time ever is 1:46, and my worst time is 3:15. So you know,
Wow.
the island is going to decide how long it's going to take you. But
So I know that swimming in cold and extremely is extremely dangerous. So take us through the preparation process that you go through before you get into the water. How do you prepare your mind psychologically before you go through one of these swims?
Right, let me give you a little bit of background. Firstly, humans have not evolved well to handle the cold. We have, however, evolved extremely well to avoid it. So what I have grown to understand over many years and many swims is just how unbelievably clever our minds and bodies are to make sure we survive. So when you throw yourself into extremely cold situations, the body reacts profoundly, but more importantly, so does the mind. And it convinces you very efficiently that you only have minutes to live. It's way too painful and you need to get out. While that is happening, that pain, panic, and fear that's happening in your head and that hyperventilation, your body starts implementing all its own defense mechanisms. So the blood starts rushing from your extremities. It's not just fingers and toes, it's biceps and thighs and everything, all the big muscles, and all that blood rushes into your center core to protect your vital organs. So, you know, the theory, I presume, no medical genius, but is that you can live without arms and legs, but not so much without with a heart pumping blood to the brain.
Yes.
So that all happens. And obviously the colder, the more profound that impact is. So you have to understand that, and you have to acclimatize your body to the cold. You do that generally just by getting in the cold and understanding it. But what I have started to understand is how overprotective our mind is. So not only have we evolved extremely well for our mind to protect us from doing something stupid like staying in cold water too long and killing yourself or running into a fire or falling off a cliff, your mind has also evolved to protect you from the emotional pain that comes from failure.
Yes.
So when, and outside of swimming in your daily life, subconsciously, when you try and get out of your comfort zone, there's a chance you're going to fail because you're going to be doing something new. You're going to be doing something new. And there's a chance you're going to fail. And when you fail, there's a little bit of emotional pain. So what I've learned through my cold water swims is exactly that our minds and default us to staying in that comfort zone because it doesn't want us to hurt from the pain. I mean, that's putting it very simply. We can get into it a bit deeper, but that is what the cold has taught me, and what I now understand probably better than most, and apply to all areas of my life and my swimming.
So that's a lot of like mind power and willpower and focus. And really, like, do you do any meditation to try and control your thoughts before you go in, or you just say, I'm doing it, that's it, my will, and you go?
Well, it's a little bit like the latter, although I've been asked a few times, do I meditate? And my initial response is no. I've never sat down and said, now I'm going to meditate about a swim.
Okay.
But before I do a swim, I do find myself needing to withdraw from a crowd, and I find a quiet place, and I picture every stroke. I picture that impact when I'm going to get into the water. I visualize it in my head. I zone out. You know, I'm not talking so much about a Robben Island crossing. That's fairly standard issue for me, but when I go and do something extreme cold, like in Antarctica, where the water is -1 degree, where I swam, you need to be very, very mentally prepared. And I was very, very nervous. Didn't know, because what I was going to try and do, I shouldn't be able to survive, and I didn't know if I would. So I was scared as hell. And I remember spending a lot of time in my little cabin on that ship, trying to zone out and not listen to all the naysayers and just focus in my head.
Yeah, so meditation comes in different forms.
I suppose, yeah, that's where I was going. That's probably is a form of meditation. So
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes.
Yes. So basically, you're starving your distractions and feeding your focus by you shifting and sitting with your quiet time and stuff. So I want to share a story with you that I went through. I did some martial arts training, and I wanted to go to like the most difficult place on earth. So I went to Japan to train where the samurai trained on Mount Fuji, and it was a spiritual retreat. So we decided, well, not decided, it was part of the retreat, that we had to spend 3 days and 3 nights on the side of Mount Fuji with no water, only with 1 liter of water and no food for 3 days and 3 nights with only the clothes on our backs.
Sure.
So we had no blankets, no nothing, and we were told to stay in this imaginary little circle with wild bears in the dark, day and night, and this cold, ice cold mist came in. It was supposed to be summer, and I literally thought I was going to die of hypothermia.
Wow.
So I had to really focus, and when you don't eat for 3 days and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, you start seeing
Sure,
things.
yeah.
It was really, really intense.
I've never not eaten for 3 days or 3
Okay.
nights, so I don't know.
That's
Carry on.
what's going to happen.
And with that extreme cold, you really have to dig deep and try and shift, because your mind is saying, get off the mountain. And there were people that actually couldn't cope and they actually left. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. My mind is not going to conquer what is happening in the situation.
Mind over body.
100%,
Yeah.
and that is where the lessons lie.
Exactly.
You know what you realize is just how overprotective your mind is. Because hey, it wants to keep you alive, and your mind is you. It's not like something over there that you can control. It's how you feel. It's how you think.
Yes.
But when you understand those processes, when you understand how overprotective it is, you can start to look at all areas of your life, not just being on a cold mountain
Yes.
in Japan, but or in cold water, but running a business where you are steered and guided to stay the course and that's not always bad advice, but the one thing I can promise you is that you learn nothing inside your comfort zone. So if you do not get out your comfort zone, you cannot learn new stuff, and when you stop learning new stuff, you stop growing.
Exactly.
And when you stop growing, especially in business and life, you're going to get knocked over. And those are the messages that I try and illustrate to all that will listen.
So, Ryan, you did the World Official Ice Mile in the Antarctica, where you experienced not only the dangers of the freezing cold water of -1 degrees, but you also had to be aware of other dangers, and that is of the leopard seal. So if those of you who have watched Our Planet with Sir David Attenborough, that's the latest series that's just come out on Netflix, you will know that the leopard seal eats king penguins, and which are rather large. They have very sharp teeth and weigh 400 kilograms. They're basically the polar bear of the ice. So Ryan, I watched your YouTube video where you actually, the preparation of going into the water and watching you dive in and doing the swim, and then the next minute watching these leopard seals popping up. And I tell you what, my heart was racing. It was like watching a thriller movie, and I was like, oh my God, get out of the water. Oh. So what was it like doing that swim, and what was going through your head? Were you aware of these creatures, predators in the water, should I say?
So, you know what, the leopard seal is an incredible beast. It really, really
Yes.
is. And before we went to Antarctica, I went with a group of mates, by the way, so I wasn't alone there. We did a lot of preparation,
Yes.
but all the focus was on the swim and how to survive the temperatures. And if I'm brutally honest, I didn't even know leopard seals existed before I actually arrived in Antarctica.
Wow.
And the crew who were there to help us said, what's your plan for the leopard seals? You don't want to be in the water with them. And which is when I found out what they were. And then you get to Antarctica and you see the size of them, the reptilian dinosaur kind of look that they have, and you hear the stories. They have been responsible for 1 or 2 deaths, but I don't believe they have a bad bone in their body. It's kind of like the great white, he just wants to see what you are.
Exactly. Take a
But
bite.
he takes a bite in the process,
Yes.
and this doesn't work out so well for you. The leopard seal is the same. So we became petrified, or let me talk for myself. I became petrified of the leopard seals before the swim. It was an added hurdle. And a big mental distraction when I was trying to focus on getting through the 1 mile distance in my speedo in water that was -1, which is where all my focus was, because you obviously you die quickly in that, so you got to stay very, very focused. So you asked me, do I think about the leopard seals when I was out there? No, I did not think about them much anyway. The water is very clear in Antarctica, so I could see for what felt like miles down into the depths.
Wow.
So you see the bottom of the icebergs. You
Oh,
you go right
stunning.
down,
Must
you
have
see-
been beautiful.
Well, it really was. Listen, you know what? You didn't stick around to admire the beauty
Yes,
while
of
you were
course.
in the swim. But yes, in retrospect, I suppose there's a lot of beauty involved. And we had a team that was put about 8 people. Their sole responsibility was to watch for leopard seals. And if a leopard seal came anywhere close to us while we were making our attempt, their role was to pull us out the water.